7th Annual Energy, Drone, and Robotics Coalition Summit here in Houston, Texas. And we're going to kick this live stream off with some incredible folks. We've got Edgar Valdez from Deloitte, and you may know him from UPS Flight Forward. What many of you may not know is Edgar is actually also an attorney and participated in our first event here called Law Tech Connect Energy Edition yesterday, and personally sponsored it. So thank you, Edgar, and great to see you.
Absolutely. No, really appreciate being here. Actually, first time even at the Energy, Drones, and Robotics Summit, and it's been incredibly exciting to understand the actual sector itself. It's been really incredible coming from more of a package delivery focus to understand the challenges that this sector has specifically been looking at and actually been addressing. And what's been really great in regards to like our actual focus for our discussion yesterday was that it really wasn't even just aerial. It was from both ground robotics, maritime, and I think that's really going to be the key for the actual integration of this autonomous technology. Is really going to be from an intermodal perspective, and you do have to address the challenges and the benefits for each of those. Not just use cases, but the actual regulatory scheme that's required to really expand and actually deploy this technology. So very excited. I've had a blast. Very much look forward to it in the future, and really looking forward more so to the future and deployment of this technology.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, we are obviously live, and I want to do a couple shout outs here. We've got, I hope I don't butcher your name, Augustin Dermos saying, hi, everybody. Hey, Don Zoldai. And Kay Cruz, who was actually at the event yesterday as a VIP delegate, saying, great event yesterday, great speakers, good information, relaxing environment. Many thanks to you and the sponsor. So thank you, Kay, for coming. It was awesome to see you. Kay is involved in Skyfish drones. There's a lot of great things in the industry. So the panel Edgar was talking about was actually called Navigating the Air and Sea Lanes for Offshore Energy. And, Edgar, one thing that jumped out at me, and I don't know if you agree with this, it seems like the maritime environment, at least, the underwater, certainly ROVs, the remotely operated ones on a tether, so easy to operate and less constrained from a legal and regulatory perspective than from the air.
Yes, I think that definitely was very much apparent, because it was then really more geared towards the actual challenges from an actual technology perspective. And yeah, I'll be the first to admit that from a maritime legal, definitely it's not my focus and my basis, but I do understand at least that it can become a little complicated, especially that it's a little bit more governed by treatises and especially from an international perspective. But yeah, it did seem like the ability to actually deploy the technology is sometimes not as hindered from more of an actual legal perspective. But I like I said, I really do think that it's going to be ultimately the maritime and aerial and ground deployment. I think that's where you can start to be able to build off of each other and leverage how they make the actual business case for companies.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, fun fact, everybody, the territorial sea goes out to 12 nautical miles, from the coastline. And, if you're venturing out beyond that, either by air or by sea, then you're in international, either airspace or waters. And that's when all of these really interesting rules start kicking in. And, we had Jonathan Ruprecht, up here with his phone yesterday, like ticking off, did you think about this and these 50 things? And it was like really mind blowing. I wish I had a videographer yesterday. I didn't. So if you weren't here live, you missed out big time. But Edgar, before we get to our next guest, tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Deloitte and how folks can reach you as we kind of close out here.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate that. So ultimately, a lot of my focus is really in regards to actually UAS, AAM deployment. Been working with clients from actual program stand-up. So it can be as simple as either navigating the regulatory scheme that is required to actually deploy a program, as well as actually from a program management perspective of actually identifying what are you actually trying to do identify that actual use case and then assess them in regards to actually developing those test cards and actually be able to identify those best-in-class vendors for them to make sure that they're going to be set up for success now, and then actually like not move from like just a proof of concept to an actual scalable operations for their actual autonomous operations using a variety of systems. So that's really a lot of my focus, and please feel free to reach out to me, of course, on LinkedIn, or you can just real simple, E. Valdez, so first letter of my name, and then last name Valdez at Deloitte.com.
There you go. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you
really
so much.
appreciate
Of
you. I'm
course.
glad you're liking the event. It's so great that you came.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks. We'll see you soon.
Perfect.
And next up, we've got Michael Hill from Volatus Aerospace. Michael are you here? Are you stationed here in Texas, or you live here?
Dallas.
That's what I thought. You lived in the Dallas area. So Michael, tell everybody a little bit about what you do at Volatus.
Yeah. Hi, I'm the regional director of Volatus. First, thank you for having us here.
Of course.
We love to support Don. So I'm regional director of business development for Volatus Aerospace. I head up a number of projects, multiple cargo operations, both international and offshore, and just some other projects that are going on with Volatus. So really the big projects, that's what I help Volatus build out.
And you came yesterday. You were one of our VIP delegates. So great to have you in the audience there. You've been at this show for a number of years now, right? This is kind of a local staple for you. And what have you seen, Michael, over time with regards to this show? What changes? How has the industry, drones, robots, with respect to energy, how's it evolved or changed in your opinion?
It really has changed a lot. And Sean and his team, they run a really great event here, right? If you've never been to the Energy Drone, you need to come because there's a lot of great tech that's involved here. I would say for me, the thing that I noticed the most is more ground-based robots, right? There's more that type of robots coming in, not so much aerial, right? And then there seems to be more service providers and that, right? So I would say that's the biggest shift I've seen this year alone, right? But it's still a great event. It's worth coming out and seeing all the technology that's out there and how best they can support your operations.
I totally agree with you, Michael, because I was like literally tripping over spot-like dogs everywhere. It's like they were running around, crash. This one guy had a crash right in front of me. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like what is happening right now? And so, but it wasn't Spot, it was like some other, and there was like a handful of different ones. With all weird contraptions. And I guess they're like using these on oil rigs.
You notice there's just several this year too. Usually it was Spot, right? But now there's multiples in there. So I guess maybe there's a greater demand for a robotic dog.
I guess so. And the other interesting thing about this event is how the energy community comes out here in droves. Like I heard that Chevron literally has 50 people here at this event.
Wouldn't surprise me, right? They're a big player in this technology. We're working on a couple projects with them, but they are really forward thinking and using this technology for their operations. So it doesn't surprise me.
So what are you excited to see over the next day and a half before the show ends?
More dogs.
More dogs. Well, you guys have a giant booth. You guys have a really big presence here.
Yeah, we always have so much to showcase, right? For me, I like this one because it's kind of a home reunion for me. I get to see my friends and keep building those relationships with our partners and future partners. And, it's a great event to come to, and I always enjoy it. It's a very relaxed environment, and a lot of knowledge is shared here, right? So definitely should come.
Awesome. And speaking of knowledge, like I said, you were in the audience yesterday. Was there anything I think you sat in the Beyond Visual Line of Sight panel, if I recall correctly. Were there any epiphanies, anything kind of interesting you'd like to share with the audience here that maybe didn't have a chance to come?
Well, I think it was really informative for one. BVLOS is the secret sauce for all of us, right? They want to push those operations. For me, I've got an international cargo operation, and we've got an offshore project we're working on. And the regulatory framework that's involved in it, people underestimate that what really is involved to launching these operations and to do them successfully. And within those regulations, whether it's international waters or through the FAA or Border Patrol or whatever it may be, right? So I think that your session was fantastic, and I think more people need to be paying closer attention to those regulatory hurdles that have to be overcome, right, to make your operation successful.
Yeah, and so many other challenges
Yeah.
too. We're going to hear from Don Berchoff here shortly, TruWeather, but out there in the open seas, some crazy weather over that water.
Yeah, it can be.
So it's especially when you're talking miles and miles out and kind of making sure you have accurate forecasts and nowcasts for that. So anyway, Michael, how can, if they're not, well, first of all, if they are here, what's your booth number? If they're not here, how can they find you and reach you?
Yeah, so if you are here, Adams Aerospace, booth 201, please stop by. We've got a number of aircraft and technology that we brought to showcase, as we always do. We love supporting this event. And outside of that, you can go to ValadisAerospace.com and you can find out more about us, ValadisAerospace.com, or find me on LinkedIn, and glad to connect with you and share knowledge with you about this great industry.
Very good. And by the way, everybody, I'm sure many of you follow me. Adams Aerospace, this is the second year they've done an annual endowment across the Dawn of Drones podcast, a monthly spot. And coming up at the end of this month is Sharper Shape. This is a support to critical infrastructure month, overall sponsored by SAIC, but Sharper Shape will be our 100th episode.
Nice.
100 for the Dawn of Drones. Nice. So make sure you're dialing in for that. And we thank you so much for that support on that show. So Michael, great to have you.
Yeah. I have one more thing that I want to add.
Yeah, sure.
Yesterday it was fantastic that I got to see your book that you partnered with USI, right? It's a fantastic book. And I love supporting USI. They do great things, but I'm about halfway through the book, and the book is awesome. If you're interested in regulatory and how to build out your drone program and those things, I would advise you to read the book because it's great.
Well, thank you so much. In fact, that's a great segue because Josh Olds from USI is our next speaker. So thanks, Michael. We got Josh coming on up. So Josh, your duty title, your job title, is it president now or CEO?
President and CEO.
Okay,
USI.
president and CEO. That's what I thought. So so USI, you guys kind of rebranded, right? Unmanned Safety Institute now, focused USI, like kind of truncated here. Educational sponsor for the Law Tech Connect Energy Edition. So thank you for that. So many people got my the drone law book that I authored for USI for free as a result of that donation. So thank you so much.
Well, of course.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about USI.
So USI, it's been nearly a decade in the space, really focusing on personnel, organizational standards, trying to rising tides. Our mantra is rising tides are going to lift all boats. Really trying to help both workforce development, creating those professional pilots, aviators, technicians, visual observers, electronic observers, all those folks that are really needed inside of the industry, thinking about aviation safety as they're deploying the technology, feeding the commercial industry with that talent, being able to help those commercial companies deploy standards familiar to aviation, but maybe not so familiar to the commercial marketplace. We're often talking about the technology like computers in the 90s. It's changing, revolutionizing the way companies are deploying this tech to create those efficiencies, create ROI with that technology, but it's requiring upskilling, reskilling in a lot of ways, and trying to create those standard models from an aviation safety perspective. So that's our focus and our going forward vision.
At the heart, what you do is about safety, but it's about workforce development, right? And building successful programs across the board, whether corporate, enterprise, right, private, across, all of it. And one thing that jumped out at me, Josh, that I learned yesterday, I learned so much, honestly, listening to these panels, the methane compliance panel, and some of these proposals that will actually, number one, allow third-party reporting to the EPA. I mean, that's going to be wild, right? And secondarily, so what is that going to generate? That's going to generate this requirement for a lot of these companies, not just O&G, not just oil and gas, right? We heard about buried wells. We heard about ships that emit methane, all kinds of things, right? And that's going to create a need for continuous monitoring. And that's going to, in turn, generate a need for the workforce that they're saying, nope, that doesn't exist right now. And so I think there is big opportunity here. Would you agree?
I agree. I think it's really interesting when we look at the space and we look at the future of the technology. I mean, BV loss has been a big topic so far this week, and having the ability to operate this technology downrange changes the way that we are leveraging this remotely piloted technology in corporate aviation, and that workforce being able to do that. It's a higher skill, higher knowledge. They're operating in the national airspace. There's a lot of complexities around that technology. Whether automated or not, that pilot in the loop is a critical component. And so helping train and educate, beyond Part 107 and into the future of that workforce, we want that workforce readily available as these regulations come down, because the industry is going to explode with those capabilities. And so that workforce is a necessity for the future growth of the industry.
It is. And, one thing I learned also yesterday was with regards to technology, some of these sensors may need some tweaking. When you're flying and you got rotors going and all kinds of wind, how accurate, and apparently there's natural methane emissions from like swamps or certain things. And so figuring all that out and what are the quantities, I think there's just so much room for growth here. I mean, we had Dr. Jack Elson from Black Swift Technologies. They created a methane sensor in partnership with another company. So I'm going to hit him up afterwards and ask him some questions after hearing all of this. But so you guys have a booth here too. This is not your first year. So what are you seeing, Josh, like on the floor or in some of the educational sessions that you've been able to attend outside of Law Tech Connect, that you find to be just kind of enlightening or interesting that you'd like to share with everybody listening?
I think the most exciting thing coming out of shows like this, and we've been here every year since the beginning, it's the excitement about the technology and how it's changing the ways companies do business. It's a new way of capturing modern aviation technology to drive ROI. It's making money, saving money, reducing hazard hours. And so when you hear the conversations and the excitement around BV loss, which, we've been talking about BV loss for a long time, but that light is at the end of the tunnel with the reauthorization. A lot of the conversations this week are revolving around how can we use this technology going forward into the future. And it's exciting.
It is. By the way, Women in Drones just jumped into the chat. Hi, Dawn and Josh. Hey, Women in Drones. We love you guys. No, absolutely. So much change on the horizon. And what Josh is talking about, Mary Caitlin Ray from Crowell Moring was supposed to be on the stream. She had to depart a little bit early, but she gave us an overview of some of the House language of the FAA 2023 Reauthorization Act that just dropped in the last week. And they're, at least right now, saying they're putting some timelines on the FAA, 4 months from when that goes final, if it does go final, right? For the FAA to put out a notice of public rulemaking on beyond visual line of sight. And then I believe it was 16 months thereafter to have a final rule. Now, when you think about 16 months, with that comment period and Remote ID got 53,000 comments, and then having to adjudicate all those and write a rule, that's a pretty tight turn. And I don't know what's going to come of it, but I'll tell you, the industry needs it, So, yeah. So Josh, are you guys involved also? The FAA just dropped essentially like a request for information, a whole host of questions about beyond visual line of sight where they're seeking industry's input.
Yeah, they're requesting comment. I think that comment period actually closes this week, potentially. I know there was an extension request that has been denied. So I believe that closes this week. We are working on our comments to submit as part of those. Really cheerleading, the fact that we've got new exemptions, new waivers, really trying to push the boundaries with the capability of the technology. I think it's important to note that, regulations really create a bubble around the industry, and not in a bad way. It's about safety, right? It's about aviation, national airspace safety, but being able to provide comment and being able to push the envelope on the capabilities of the technology and the kinds of technologies being used to safely navigate the airspace is a good thing, and the data that's needed to make those safety concept of operations possible for others to join in that compliance-based BV loss is only going to, again, raise ships on that tide. And so we're excited about the new exemptions, the waivers coming out into the marketplace, because again, it's just pushing the boundaries, pushing the barriers of how this technology is being utilized.
Yeah, awesome. You know what? I was just thinking, because Women in Drones is saying they love us too. Speaking of deadlines, that FAA comment period is coming up. Well, so is the Women in Drones deadline for Women in Emerging Technologies Awards. If you know a deserving woman or team, there's a Hall of Fame award as well. Make sure you're nominating folks. They've teamed up with the Smithsonian and the Commercial Drone Alliance this year and having a big event at the end of October to celebrate those award winners. So nominate some folks, nominate people. It is free, everybody. Please do that. These awards are life-changing, and I'm actually a perfect example as a recipient back in 2019. So Josh, how can people reach you? What's up next for USI?
So if you're at the show, booth 211. If you're not, flyusi.org. Otherwise, my email, josh.olds@flyusi.org.
Awesome, man. Well,
right.
thank you so
Thank you
much.
very
Appreciate
much.
you, man.
All right, thanks.
And everybody loves their swag, by the way. I don't have a sample, but they've got this little phone holder, and it's like, it is money. So, all right, next up we have Trent. Trent, you're going to have to, I think I've been butchering your last name, and it's Teyama?
Teyama.
Teyama. T-A-Y.
T-E-Y.
T-E-Y-E-M-A.
Right.
Teyama. Okay. So Trent Teyama, for most of my fans, you may not have heard of Trent. He runs a company called CSG Strategies. He's got very deep roots in cybersecurity, former FBI agent, just an incredible individual who I had the honor to meet at Edge 2023 this year, earlier in Las Vegas. We kept in touch. And fun fact, everybody, dial in next Tuesday for our Full Tilt Leadership podcast at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. Trent is going to be on that show. So you were on our cybersecurity panel.
Yes.
And well, actually, it was technically securing critical infrastructure. And you talked about cybersecurity. Everybody, drones are flying computers, but there's so many different facets of cybersecurity. So for those that weren't able to come, can you share a couple of nuggets, like maybe your top 3 points that you'd like people to understand about securing critical infrastructure?
It's really important for securing critical infrastructure. The first thing is have a plan. It's going to happen. You're going to have an attack. You need to take steps to protect yourself, just like in critical infrastructures for any other issue you may have at a plant or in your facility. You already have it. You test it. You write down the plan, and you exercise it all the time. Same thing with cybersecurity. The more interconnected we become, the more you need to protect against it. It's going to happen.
Yeah. So that's point number 1. Identify vulnerabilities and test them. We have a plan.
Have a plan and test them. So especially when you're dealing with drones, you're dealing with your critical infrastructure. The other thing you need to know is really understand the regulations and policies are changing. They're going forward. There's a big push. The administration just pushed out their national cybersecurity plan for 2023, and they're working across all critical infrastructures. So if you're in a critical infrastructure, you may be governed by other critical infrastructures if you overlap. So you have to keep that in mind. So it may not be your sector-specific agency. There may be another one that you're now bound by regulations. You need to work through those dialogues or work through those regulations to understand what you're on the hook for. I mean, it's really interesting. So the great thing about Law Tech Connect this yesterday and today is I've learned a lot. And even every time I come to these things, I realize the overlaps where I wasn't seeing it before. So if I'm thinking energy, thinking traditional energy, sector-specific agencies, but then we start talking about FAA,
right,
and Part 107, and now you're using autonomous drones, you're using manned drones, and how does that affect how you do operations? That's a big deal. It's a lot of things to keep in mind.
It is. That's why when I saw him at Edge, my wheels start turning. I'm thinking cybersecurity. There's such a need for an understanding of that in the drone industry. Honestly, like AUVSI just created a cybersecurity working group. I feel like within the last year. And, when you look around, Trent, there's actually not a ton of companies in this space as a wedge into the drone and robotics industry. And it's such a critical need because, what we're seeing, right? We talked about this. Yes. You talked about this yesterday. We're seeing in Russia and Ukraine, the hacking, all of it, right? The jamming, the spoofing, and having a plan for that, like for your operations, is critical.
Well, and that's a good point, because if you think about it, it's more advances are made in hacking drones and targeting drones, both to defend and attack, especially with the conflict that's going on between Russia and Ukraine. Yeah. So everything that's being learned and pushed forward, we'll start seeing that here locally dealing with all drone operations, whether it's aerial, ground, or marine. And it's something really it's going to keep the industry on its toes.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I kind of digressed what you were trying to say. There was like a 3 parts to your points, I think. You said have a plan, exercise it,
right.
Know the rules, right? And what was the third?
Well, and the third is be involved in the decision. It can't be a surprise. So it's there's going to be an attack. It's going to happen. And where most companies fail in this area is they treat it, they freeze up during an attack. It's going to happen. You have to exercise it and move through. And it's not going to stop. It's going to be an ongoing effort.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is your first time to Energy Drone. What are your thoughts? Like, what are your impressions?
It's really great. I enjoyed all the panels, but the one that really I enjoyed the most was like the methane. They're all great. I got a lot out of it, but I didn't realize the challenges that a lot of in the energy community, especially oil, gas, dealing with methane and leakage and tracking it, and sensors, and how to deal with that, and the risks. And since I deal in the critical infrastructure sectors, what that presents. It was really a great topic, and some of the regulatory things coming down that industry really needs to pay attention. Oh, I know what I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
On that, I was working. I apologize.
That's okay.
So the third part. So there's a third entity. So when we talk about policy law and like cybersecurity, where you're coming down with the third part in methane. Now other people can report if they see leaks.
Yeah, I was talking about that third-party reporting. It's like insane.
Well, there's a concept in the law also called GITAM. It's Latin, but through that third-party reporting, that means they can also go to the Department of Justice on the civil side and file actions against your company. So this is why it's really important to be, mindful of what's going on, talk to your legislator, and also track how to manage that threat, because that means a third party can actually file a civil lawsuit, which, in addition to anything a regulator may do, there may be civil penalties coming against you by a third party. So that's why that third party reporting is actually a big deal, for a company.
It really is. And people, they think about methane, they think, ozone, and there's climate change deniers out there, which I'm not going to go down that road right now, but it's a safety issue.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the epiphanies I had yesterday was when somebody said, this is an issue for departments of transportation, because a lot of these lines are under roads. And that story about how a guy fired up a chainsaw and freaking blew up because the methane was there, and they don't even know where these pipelines are located half the times. And so when you think about safety and those concerns, I mean, it's a very significant issue for so many different sectors, if you will, of critical infrastructure, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right, CSG Strategies, tell them a little bit about you, how they can reach you before they all watch you next week on the Till.
CSG Strategies, I'm based out of the Washington, D.C. area. I do cyber advisory services related to policy law and counter threat. Best way to reach me is on LinkedIn, and I'll see you next week.
Awesome. Very good. But before I let you go, I'm going to read a couple of these comments. Nancy Shemwell from Centrix was here in the audience yesterday. She said, thanks again for a great event yesterday. And Women in Drones is actually, we got Soné Koch from South Africa. Soné is an amazing drone pilot and lawyer out there. We had her on the show a long time ago in our clubhouse. And let's see, Women in Drones, great points, but scary that it's just a matter of time before an attack happens. I like his points about having a plan.
Yeah, have a plan.
That needs to be in the mantra in the industry. Have a plan. I always used to say in the military, hope is not a plan. And of course, a plan never survives first contact with the enemy. We all know this, but you still need a dang plan.
Absolutely.
Right. So thanks for all your comments. Keep them coming. We love you guys. Thank you so much. And thanks for coming to the event.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. All right. Next up, we've got Michael Seal from Velos Rotors. Velos is working with Volatus as well. And Michael, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, it's COO of Velos Rotors. I've been on board about a year and a half. We're currently manufacturing in Greece and looking to bring our platform to the U.S. and integrate some of these payloads that you guys keep talking about.
Exactly. So I saw your drone at AUVSI, if I recall correctly. It was like hanging from the ceiling, and it looks kind of like a helicopter.
That's correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
It's a Grip 2 helicopter, sub 55 pounds, Part 107. And our claim to fame is it's a fully redundant system. So if you lose an engine, you lose a battery, or you lose an ESC, it's built to stay flying. So some of these payloads that we fly are $100,000+.
Wow.
And then some of the regulatory restraints require some companies and some agencies to fly a parachute. And so not only do you have the backup of the second engine and second battery set, you also have ability for a parachute.
So I don't know if you can get into details because you just intrigued me with this comment. Like some of our payloads are like $100,000. First of all, how heavy of a payload can your drone carry? And what's it called? Your drone?
It's called a Velos V3.
Okay. How big of how heavy of a package can it
So you have
carry?
about 35 pounds between battery and payload. So you can fly a 10-pound battery for 20 minutes and carry a very heavy payload. Or traditionally, our standard format is about a 10-pound package for 53 to 55 minutes.
Wow. Okay. And again, going back to the $100,000 because that was interesting. I mean, you're here at the Energy Drone Robotics Coalition Summit, I assume, because you're working somehow in the energy sector with this drone delivering expensive packages. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
So this is our first time at a show like this, and thanks for the invite from Adams Aerospace. Those expensive payloads really are around the LiDAR, but the sensors that keeps coming up right now are the methane sensors and that stuff. But some of the LiDARs range from 150 to 280,000. So. Some pretty expensive payloads.
That is very much so. Awesome. So what are your impressions so far?
First impression is I'm not sure yet, actually.
Did you just get here?
Yeah,
you were supposed to be at my thing yesterday,
yes,
and I don't think you came.
Yeah, but the same players are here. You kind of do the preliminary walkthrough, and and the space and the size of the sensors and the size of the aircraft are kind of consolidating. In my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And kind of see what shakes out. But again, as soon as someone believes, yep, Mike, it's fully redundant, it flies for 50 minutes to an hour, and all this, it's all about what the drone does for you, right?
It's a tool.
And then like some of your previous guests of what the regulatory and how can they use some of that stuff to get it done, right? If you can only use it for 1 or 2 miles, then it's kind of hard to get that ROI. But once you start getting some BLOF approvals and a training regimen there, then you can actually start replacing man replacement stuff, and that's when then people can create value in the space.
Yeah, that's a great point that actually Tim Tenney from Nordic Unmanned raised yesterday during his panel about the air and sea lanes. He's got thousands of hours as a crewed pilot, worked for was in the Air Force, retired out of there. Talking about the advanced training that is going to be needed for beyond visual line of sight. This is not like, study for 3 days, take your Part 107. By the way, I personally studied for more than 3 days, FAA. I took thousands of practice tests, asked my family, but still, I would not personally feel comfortable flying beyond visual line of sight. I'm not that nuanced. Just having taken that test, I do feel like there needs to be stricter requirements, and it has to be that level of safety. Maybe not quite for general aviation and commercial airliners, right? But like something a little bit more than what we've got right now.
I couldn't agree more. And some of the space, and since I stepped out of the military space and kind of went to the commercial space, the mission planning, even before you go to the aircraft,
good point.
Really, really been some things I think we need to, as a community, to grow on. So and leads to my first questions when I do get some interest in Velos.
Yeah, that is a great point about checklists. This isn't like, okay, fly it up, make it go forward, make it go back, right, left. Okay. Yeah. This is much more significant. So totally agree. By the way, everybody, Michael is going to be on the Dawn of Drones in November, which is Crossover Technologies Month. So make sure you're staying tuned for that. And of course, join us every week. But in the meantime, how can folks reach you?
Same as everyone else here. First one is on LinkedIn, or go to our website, velosrotors.com. Fill out the info link, and I respond pretty quickly.
Awesome. I'm looking at my little list here because I forget who's next. Oh my gosh. We have none other than Don Berchoff from TruWeather Solutions coming up. So thank you so much, Michael. Glad to have you. All right, here comes Don. And Don was on that Beyond Visual Line of Sight panel. Here he is. he is no stranger to the full crew, the Donna drones, all of it. And I'm telling you, this guy is doing amazing things. And when you think about beyond visual line of sight and what is needed, absolutely weather is a big deal. And that beyond visual line of sight aviation rulemaking committee report had very little information about weather in it, 400 pages as it was. And Don's been working to change that and change essentially hearts and minds about weather. So Don, great to have you back.
Thanks, Dawn. Appreciate being here and having all these great folks on today that you've had. I love listening to the stories and the use cases because it just shows weather ties into every one of those.
It does. And Mike, my producer is out there, my full crew co-host. Hey, Mike Peel, great to see you, buddy. I kept the audio on today. Yay, me. So, all right. So getting back to you, Don. First of all, thank you again for your support of the Law Tech Connect Energy Edition, our inaugural event yesterday. And was there anything that you learned? I mean, you always give such knowledge to others when they hear you speak, but as you were listening, and by the way, Don did stay from end to end the entire 4 hours yesterday. It was a half-day event. Anything that jumped out at you that you were like, wow, that's interesting. I wasn't tracking that.
Well, I think, first off, one of the things I've learned being here at this conference is that there's not a lot of activity and planning going on using autonomous vehicles to go out over to the deeper reaches of the Gulf of Mexico on these platforms. And then I learned that there's more of an emphasis right now in the energy area on pipeline inspection and the methane problem that has brought up. And I think it was very interesting that you noted that when you go out and you sense something using using some kind of sniffer or whatever technology you're using to see methane, there's so many environmental factors that can mess that measurement up. And you even said it. You said swamps that, put off methane, or the wind, or there's so many factors. So, it's not a matter of just going out there and flying a vehicle and collecting data and then you're done. No, you have to back out the environmental impacts of that. You have to, otherwise.
So analytics become very important.
Analytics become very important. And, when I was in the military, we used to do a lot of support for something called MASIT. And that meant, we used to go figure out, if something was coming out of a smokestack, what were they really producing? And you had to back out the environmental information, the moisture, the winds, and everything. And that was a science in itself to know that you were accurately portraying what was coming out and what the amount of what was ever being produced was coming out. That's how you figure this stuff out. So I just want to drive that home. That's what yesterday listening to the methane panels, it got me really thinking about that.
Yeah, so MASINT, that's an acronym. INT is Intel, right? Intelligence. What's the MAS part again? I don't remember.
Yeah. It's all about using some intelligence sources that and techniques using IO or electro-optics kind of measurement devices to collect information that somebody may be doing something out there that is not a single, like you hearing or you seeing. It's more of sniffing and trying to figure out what they're doing and what they're producing.
Okay.
And,
something I learned from you yesterday, which makes a lot of sense, and it was maybe intuitive, but I never really thought about it, was that over the high seas, it has its basically own weather, essentially, almost like over a fire. A fire creates its own weather. Well, so does the ocean. So tell us a little bit about the challenges of flying beyond visual line of sight outside that territorial sea, maybe in the deep sea area.
Well, the ocean, the water, depending on the season.
Right.
You could set up your own thermocline of temperature in the day and at night that change, right? The water's warm in the day, at night the atmosphere above cools, and you set up some kind of these flows that we may not be able to measure with our models because we don't have data out there.
Right.
Keep in mind that, again, we don't collect data below 5,000 feet. We definitely don't collect data below 5,000 feet in some areas, in the lowest 1,000 feet over the ocean, and over the satellites do okay, but the bottom line is there's a lot of these circulations that's set up. And if you talk to helicopter pilots, especially if you're starting to, also deal with trying to land on these rigs out there, you get all kinds of squirrely winds. You also have the fog problem. You may not expect that you're going to have sea fog in patches out there. Now, again, if you can fly IFR, it's not an issue. But if you can't, you're going to be going in and out of conditions that we may not even know exist. So it's just a total, different environment out there that the water, causes a lot of these localized effects that we don't yet have the great ability to model it, probably because we don't have the data.
So you've been building out a national weather sensor network, essentially, in a lot of different places across the country. Are you here at Energy Drone because part of your vision is maybe slapping some of these, that's a technical term, right? Slapping some of these sensors on some of these towers that are out there and being able to crowdsource the data in places where no one's collecting?
Well, I think, we're focusing on where the action is, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a business case that has to be made here.
True.
And so if there's a business case for putting wind scanning LiDARs out there on these rigs, because it's going to help us open up the pipeline to allow for these autonomous vehicles to travel
No pun
back
intended,
and forth.
pipeline.
Right? I do that once in a while.
I know you do. You're so punny.
And so, then it makes sense, right? Folks don't really, another pun, people don't understand that the whole challenge in what we're trying to do, BV loss, is that we don't have a pilot on the aircraft anymore. And the pilot is the best weather sensor we ever had. And it have had, whatever.
Yeah, right.
And so if you're talking about, even you talk to helicopter pilots, like our friend Rex Alexander, who used to fly quite a bit in very dangerous areas where the weather was not known. Yep. Even, when you look on your little UAV forecast or whatever it is, that's not relevant to what these aircraft are trying to do, right? You can't fly BV loss on UAV forecast. You can't fly BV loss. That's why we're going to see better training is going to be required for our remote pilots. And we're going to have better rules about managing weather data to make sure that they're using data that's real and not data that is imagined in some of these models. So this whole idea of where do we put sensors, it's all going to be based where the action is, because there's a business case that has to be made to put them out. Yep. But I can guarantee you that if there's high density operations going on somewhere, that the return on investment for these operators for paying for better weather data that they can't get today is going to be there, because it's all about flight time. It's about revenue generation. It's about safety. And you can't do that without a pilot on the aircraft as well as you can with a pilot on the aircraft.
Absolutely. So Chevron, BP, all y'all, as Shell, you're out there. If you're listening, contact this guy, because you need to be having these conversations. By the way, everybody, Don has been very active in ASTM 38 and changing that weather standard. I know we've talked about that before. We're getting short on time, and I've got a couple other guests here, Don. But real quick, how can folks reach you?
Don.Berchoff@truweathersolutions.com, where the standard hopefully is going to go to ballot here very soon. I was working it this morning with Phil Cano at ASTM, and that standard, the FAA is waiting for it. They see the path for this standard to allow us for low, cost-effective data collection that could be used in flight control decisions in the future. So this is not about trying to, force people to pay for something they don't need. This is about setting up an environment where if you have the need to have better data, the FAA is going to allow you to use that data. And so we need standards for that. We need validation for that. And they're ready to start working on this.
Well, exciting times indeed. Thank you for your leadership and what you're doing for the industry. So great to see you again. By the way, if you're here, Don is, and I think they're taping this tomorrow, actually. I'm moderating a keynote with Don, Ed DeReyes from Saberwing, and another gentleman from
Ada from Microsoft AirSim.
Yeah, AirSim.
Yeah.
So he's a new ad. So I apologize for not remembering.
Ad is going to be a new ad.
Ad is going to be a new ad. All right. See you, buddy.
Thanks
all right.
Thank
Take care.
You for support.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you for yours. All right. Here we go. We got Tom Adams from AeroVigilance. Tom is not only fresh off of the Law Tech Connect Energy Edition, securing critical infrastructure panel, but also his own event out there at the Elevate campus in Virginia. So Great to have you back, Tom. Tom was on
Thank
this
you.
show also this stream from AUVSI as well.
Yes, first of all, I want to point something out. I was wearing some funky colored socks yesterday, and my family makes fun of, but Dawn's got some cool socks.
Yeah,
on
I've
today.
got, all right. I don't know if I'm flexible enough. All right. It says, you can see them. It's a Supergirl, and it says, give a girl, what does it say? Read
It says, "Give a girl the right to air."
right socks,
Yeah.
and she'll rule the world.
Yep.
So
exactly.
there you go. And someone just took a picture of me doing yoga in front of Tom, showing him my socks. So you never
Sorry.
know what's going to happen
Little
on these
detour, my
live
bad.
streams. They're completely unscripted and wild. So thank you. You had rainbow socks on, and I'm thinking, yo, man, it's Pride Month.
Yeah.
Go Tom. I love that.
Hey,
you know,
diversity is the
so
key.
it is the key. So all right, so this is your first energy drone show.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me your thinking about what you're seeing, what epiphanies you've had, or what new things you've learned.
Well, actually, there's a couple things. I sat through the panels all day yesterday. Also, there's a few things that I learned. One, I learned way more about methane than I ever thought I'd learn. So it was a pretty interesting topic. All the different intricacies there, but I actually enjoyed some of the conversations around some of the maritime challenges that they're having, because some of them have some similarities to some of the air domain challenges.
Absolutely,
which I thought
yeah. On the
pretty
autonomy
fascinating.
side, like
Yes.
if it's an ROV that's tethered, like have at it. Like nobody
Right.
seems to care because it's like pretty controlled. But if it's autonomous, now it's just like, oh, what about the coal regs and what about this treaty and that treaty? And it's just like mind blowing.
It's
honestly,
very complicated.
Yeah.
And there's just like there's aircraft traffic corridors, there's also shipping corridors and there's things that I just didn't know about. So it was really fascinating to listen to some of that. And then down on the floor, it's my first one. We were doing, had the La Tech Connect most of yesterday, but I did get a chance to visit some of the booths, but I did take a detour towards the bar and the
yeah,
snacks.
great happy hours, the
Yeah, it was a
Howdy
good-
networking
good
event
happy
last
hour,
night.
but
They
there-
did have soft pretzels, and I did eat one. I've been trying not to eat carbs, and it was good, and I don't regret it.
Yeah, good.
So yeah, the good stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of great vendors and exhibitors down there, so I'm looking forward to checking it out later on today.
Me too. I'm seeing some submersibles and like other things that I really not kind of normally that I'm involved in, and so I can't wait to talk to some of these folks
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah. So great event you just had down there at Accelerate, like a 2-dayer about counter UAS. I also saw your partner in crime, no pun intended. No pun intended. Actually, Casey Flanagan at the Counter UAS Congress in DC. That was a great event as well. So many things, Tom. Counter UAS is a continuing issue because those authorities for a very small handful of federal agencies are expiring in September. That is going to leave us in a huge lurch. And by the way, what we have isn't even good enough. So do you agree? I mean, this isn't about like state, local, tribal, territorial cops and giving them authority. This is about homeland security. And I can't believe people aren't a little bit more energized about this.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to frame it. I think there are a lot of, I understand some of the challenges with the, reauthorizing and proliferating some of that technology and capabilities out further. But I think there are some no-brainers. One is to be able to have full detection capability for state, local, tribal, territorial, as well as critical infrastructure, because that drone telemetry data, it really isn't something that anybody should be concerned about from privacy or civil liberty concerns. And, when you have ADSB and remote ID already broadcasting similar data, then what's the difference with the collection of that data? So I think that's an important thing, minimum step that needs to happen, but I hope that they do a lot more.
No, I agree. And if you guys are not tracking the Counter UAS Hub, that Tom is a co-creator of that with Casey. Lots of great information about counter UAS and related security issues for the industry. So sign up for that. It is free. I think you also have a subscription. But by the way, Tom and Casey were also on the Dawn of Drones podcast. Was that April?
It was back in April.
I feel like it was April. So go back and check that out if you want to learn a whole bunch more about AeroVigilance, why they created it, what this Counter UAS Hub is all about. You don't want to miss that on demand. So go back and check that out. So how can folks reach you, Tom?
Well, first of all, thanks for the plug on CUAS Hub. As you mentioned, it is a free service. One of the things that we want to do is we want to help people learn more about this topic, because there's always so much to learn
There is.
about that. And so please check it out. We put new stuff on it almost every day. But they can reach me at tom@aerovigilance.com. I can be found on LinkedIn. We're pretty easy to get a hold of.
Yep. All right. Awesome. Well, have a great rest of your show.
Thank
I will
you.
see you again.
Appreciate it.
By the way, I'm at booth 110.
110.
Tom helped me set it up.
Yeah, I did.
He's like dragging stuff down yesterday. So thank you. I always seem to enlist Tom to help me with everything. So thank you so much.
You bet.
And I'll see you down there later.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks, Tom.
Awesome,
Appreciate
man.
it. Take
All
care,
right.
everybody.
And next up, we've got Rob Knochenhauer from Censys Technologies, Miami. Daytona Beach. Sorry. Another
close,
part of
pretty
Florida. It
close,
was
yeah.
close, not close enough, but Florida-based company making really cool fixed-wing drones, doing incredible stuff out there in the energy sector. So welcome, Rob.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
Censys, thank you also for your support of yesterday's event. You were on that Beyond Visual Line of Sight panel.
Yeah, very good.
You guys have been doing this for a while, and you actually help people obtain waivers right now, don't you?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we do. There's the folks that gravitate towards Censys as a platform choice typically go in our direction because of the fact that we can help them get those BVLOS approvals under Part 107.
Yeah. So, and you are their chief of regulatory and policy, is that right?
Director of Regulatory Affairs.
There you
is
go,
what they call me.
director of regulatory.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
butchering everything
Sure,
about
that's all
Rob.
good, yeah.
Like clearly, I have no notes. Like I'm just going with this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, awesome. And you're up in Boston though, or in that area?
Yes, I live just south of Boston. That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
very cool. And you guys have been at this show before, right? Like this is not your first rodeo, no pun intended. We are in Houston. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No. So we were here last year, and so for me, this is my second time here to the Energy Drone and Robotics Summit, is what we're calling it, right? So
Yes.
So it's good to see. Like the difference is, it seems like there's a bigger crowd here this year than there was last year, and
For
that's
sure.
exciting to see. And I think that's probably an attribute of just folks becoming a bit more aware of what people can do with drones, and that's it. And from my perspective, as someone who has been an aficionado of the industry for many years now, I'm really happy to see it continue to grow. So.
Yeah, it was Edgar, our first guest today, that said, I think it was him that said he's seeing a lot of robots out there. Are you in agreement? Like I'm seeing a lot of robots on the floor as opposed to like drones like when I was at AVSI, I was like, wow, this is like a lot of drones, which was awesome.
Yeah.
This seems to be like a lot of robots.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it kind of makes sense. I mean, it's like, a lot of the operations that occur, in the energy sector, where you have like tank inspections or physical security work, where like obviously some of these dog-esque type of robots are kind of appropriate for those types of operations. It just kind of makes sense that they would see these types of things, So, and obviously there's to some degree, those kind of terror-based solutions are a little easier to manage because you don't have the issues of dealing with folks like the FAA and trying to get like complex approvals if you're trying to do beyond visual line of sight type of operations. So
yeah, I'm not going to attribute this to a particular person because I've had a couple of conversations with this person that's very high up in a pretty big organization who said, look, for the energy sector, robots are easier. They're just easier to do than drones because of the regulatory.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's BVLOS that's killing people. So we got to get moving on that, folks. So hopefully we will see some movement.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, obviously there's the FAA reauthorization that's happening as we speak.
Yep.
And then there's part of that is talks about Part 108. It is being higher training requirements for folks that are conducting BVLOS operations, amongst a whole host of other things. There's some great action happening in that space that I'm excited about. In particular, one thing I'll plug on behalf of the FAA is the Federal Registry notice that came out on May 25th regarding a request for comments on some of the technical solutions that enable BVLOS operations, that is currently open and closes tomorrow. So if you've got comments about it, and I would encourage everybody that's really interested in the space to just think about it a little bit, just kind of read through the questions and see what makes sense to you, and put your thoughts out there, because I think the FAA is really actively seeking out those inputs from industry. So.
No, that's a great point. They are. I know detect and avoid was one of those technologies that they were talking about. I can't remember. There's like 6 or 8.
Yeah, there's
things.
there's questions about UTM, about shielded
UTM.
operations, standards regarding DAA. So yeah, there's a lot of questions there. So, and a lot of things certainly at Censys that we've been considering for quite a while now. So we have a DAA solution embedded into our aircraft from Iris. Iris
Automation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember
An optical.
word.
It's an
Right.
optical solution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this summer, our team is on our road show and evaluating ground-based radar as a potential solution for managing air risk for BVLOS operations that we're pretty excited about. So we're continuing to evaluate different technical solutions to answer the mail there, as well as operational solutions that we can do to also mitigate risk. So it's because that's the name of the game, effectively. So
It really is. So you mentioned this road show, so that's a great segue. Like, where can people find you or see Censys Technologies in action?
Sure. So the road show is going on. It's Centero Tour 4, and currently this week it is in Valley, Nebraska, at co-located with Valmont Industries and up in Nebraska there. And I think they're in Tennessee next week, and the week after in Virginia, and then they close out for a couple of weeks of demos in nearby our headquarters in Daytona. So, and then beyond that, though, you can find Censys Technologies at censystech.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn, or it's I don't actually Knochenhauer Rob at censystech.com. So good luck trying to spell.
And there's an H in there. That's not a K.
That's
it's
true.
knock
There's an
with an
H,
H.
right,
I had
so
it spelled wrong on the slide.
Yeah.
It was at some
and
point.
It's actually spelled wrong on my badge.
It is?
It is.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, awesome.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So, but for you personally, what shows do you have coming up? Will we see you at Commercial UAV, for example, in Las Vegas coming up in September?
I'm going to say most likely.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
sweet. Since we're talking about that, I'm just going to put the plug in now. 3rd annual Flash Mob Networking Happy Hour going to happen on Labor Day, working with Titan Aviation and Tony Drummond to make that occur. So keep your eyes peeled and come in a little early and join us Labor Day evening for an awesome night of networking before we kick off CUAV this year. All right. So what else, Rob, as you close out, and grab Sean Guerre, who is next?
Yeah.
Is he out there?
I
I saw him for a second. Okay. Well,
yeah. So I guess my closing thoughts is I think I'm excited for the industry. I'm excited to see that the energy sector is really embracing the use of technology. I mean, and so I started my career in ground robotics, explosive ordnance disposal, and what's really kept me in the unmanned systems space for as many years as I've been in it now is the fact that I see it being used to save lives and to prevent injury to folks that are doing these dull, dirty, dangerous jobs that certainly can benefit from this type of automation. So
absolutely
great to be here.
Thank you so much. Great to work
Great
with
to
you,
see you.
Rob.
All right.
Is he really out there, Sean?
I don't know.
Can you yell?
Yeah.
All right. I'll just keep talking while we're looking for Sean Guerre. I did see him pop his head in the door at one moment. He is our last guest for today. Again, an incredible event. So not sure where he is. Interesting. Well, that's unfortunate, but that's okay. Sean is the leader of the Energy Drone Robotics Coalition Summit. If you guys are not tracking this group that he's created, the EDRC, the coalition, go to their website. You can sign up for their newsletter for free. Really great, quippy, fun stuff, but highly informative on a weekly basis about the energy sector and drones and robots in it. So just another one to add to your list of things that should be dropping into your inbox. Speaking of which, if you haven't signed up for my newsletter, please do so. You can do so on my website. Any of those little things like at the bottom says sign up for the newsletter, do it. And one last plug, besides Trent next Tuesday, next Monday, we're going to be actually airing a special broadcast from our Law Tech Connect AUVSI event. It's panel 1 about UAS and AAM regulations. Lisa Ellman's moderator. We had Kevin the Drone Guy Morris on there, rolling through the people in my brain. I know Colby Free from Airspace Link and Belinda Belinda Nixon, partner at Perkins Coie Law Firm. So if you weren't able to come to that event, or if you did come and you want to see it again, check that out, 9 a.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Eastern. But you need to sign up. Again, if you're signed up for my newsletter, you're going to get that stream. Go onto my website and sign up for that. And then you'll also have exclusive post-stream access. It will not be publicly available once that stream is done next Monday. So, well, unfortunately, we missed Sean, but that's okay. That is all she wrote. It was an awesome stream. And I'm very much, thank you, everybody who was in the comments. Really appreciate you watching this, and look forward to tomorrow. We are doing Nate Ernst live from here, Mission Go, talking about how Mission Go supports critical infrastructure. And so Nate and I will be sitting side by side in this very room, doing this live from Energy Drone here in Houston as well. So check out the Dawn of Drones, a special live edition from Energy Drone with Mission Go tomorrow, 9 a.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Eastern. Everybody, that is all she wrote. We are out here.